Hi and welcome everyone.
We do a webinar in Australian time zones and no one arrives. It's in the worst time zone.
Many familiar faces.
Yeah, so hi, welcome from Stephen and myself. I'm Rufus Pollock from Datopian and one of the creator of CKAN, I guess, and with many other people, many other people who've contributed to it over the years. And Stephen, my co-steward from Link Digital. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. Yeah, Stephen, do you want to say hello? I think with this number of people, we're actually not going to be able to do introductions from everyone. It would probably take the full hour. But yeah, I was thinking it's amazing turnout, so that's great for everyone. But yeah, Stephen, do you want to say hello? And
yeah, I'll say hello. The agenda doc, I think, is editable by anyone. So if people want to drop their name and a little bio or what brings you to CKAN, that would be awesome. That'll help us sort of frame the content for future stuff. But I've been involved like Rufus for a while now, but not as long as Rufus with CKAN, that's for sure, since about 2013. And I think it's almost a year and a half as a co-steward, but before that working as a steering group member with people like Joel Natividad, who's also on the call, which is cool. And it's been a long while. We've done community calls in the past. We've done CKAN conferences in the past attached to IODC. But the webinar approach is probably going to go best right now, and I'm keen to get involved and see what everyone has to say about CKAN. I've got a presentation later, but it's like 15-20 slides. I can chop it down, expand on it, leave as much for questions as people want to do, but it's up to the room. If you're interested, drop things in the chat, I think.
I mean, I just would be, you may be, yeah, I would love to go through and welcome everyone. I see so many different people. As I said, I think it would end up, if we had everyone introduce themselves, but I think as Stephen has suggested, please put your same in. Maybe for next time, I'm not going to try it today, but we could even do like breakout rooms so people can maybe go in smaller groups. But yeah, really just a massive welcome. Other people, I know there are some people I could see here who are from like US or South American or Brazilian. I think can certainly see some people I think I know from Brazil. I'm sure there are people here from the US. I can see, some people I know from the US. And also there's someone I know who's already said hello. Yeah, please say where you're from Ecuador, from Taipei. Welcome from Taipei. It's pretty, like Stephen, I want to really acknowledge Stephen. Here on the call, it is pretty late in Australia right now where he is, so in Canberra. So thank you so much, Stephen, for making this time work, which is like kind of doing our best in this now global world to make a time zone that would work for as many people as possible. Welcome everyone. Welcome from Brazil, as I said, from Israel, from Portugal. So yeah, just really welcome everybody. And I don't know, I mean, Stephen, as I said, I believe you're gonna kind of lead on the chairing of the meeting, and you've got the presentation. If there's, I just want to reiterate, if there is anyone who wants to, if you do want to, I think people know how to put their hand up. If there is something important or you want to add something to the agenda, feel free to go ahead. I think many people are familiar with Zoom protocol, but that raise hand is in the reaction section, and obviously you can just go off mute. Yeah.
And yeah, also you can add items in the meeting doc, so in case you want to add to the agenda.
And I also just wondered a moment, Joanna, whether you just briefly, I'd like to introduce my colleague Joanna, who many of you have gotten the emails from, who's arranged this meeting, has been a real cat herder of this event. Like it's been a while since we've had one of these. We're hoping to have them on an ongoing basis. You might be, just so maybe you want to say hello, but you've been helping organize these and we're organizing them, go ahead. So yeah, just give you a shout.
Well, first of all, welcome to everybody. I'm super duper happy that we gathered so many people here. And yeah, it's even though it's not the first initiative that we are doing, I think this is going to be the beginning of something really cool. So yeah, let's kick it off.
The one last part also says, a point of admin, people are aware, obviously the meeting's being recorded. I think the intention is that we will post it like publicly. We'll post it after the meeting for people who didn't get to come to the webinar and the discussion, just to flag that. So if you do share, you know that it will be recorded. It might, I'm not sure it's certain, but there's at least a lot strong possibility it will be posted publicly. So I just want to flag that to people.
Yeah.
So aware.
Yeah, we will upload to the YouTube channel of CKAN Association, so everybody will be able to watch it.
Cool. So do you want me to jump in and do the preso? And I've got different things, or do you want to go through the community announcements or sharing of info if anyone wants to share stuff? I guess, first up, anyone want to share anything in the CKAN related world? It could be technical, it could be non-technical, it could be a general 101 question if you're not sure about CKAN. I should sort of preface that with that my slides do cover some basics around what CKAN is, and then it goes into those three things I promised: some conceptual architecture, some data access methods, and some data storage methods with a few demonstrations, I guess. Nope. Okay.
Or well, we can do the other way around. Like you start and then let's.
Yeah. Exactly. Give people a chance to get settled in front of the thing. And and also I just say invite people if you want to, feel free. I love it. Some people got the camera. There's obviously no requirement to have your camera on, but if you do want to come off camera, it's lovely to see people. It's not, as I said, you can choose to do it for a while or not, but just to say really welcome. Okay, Stephen, over to you. Okay.
So is that okay? I probably won't go to full screen presentation, and actually it's been recorded. I might as well. Here we go. I'll go all the way back to the start. CKAN, new logo. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but we have a new website, and a while back there was a new logo designed. That's now flowing through. You might even see it on the application download at some point in the future once things get coordinated with the tech team and all sorts, but it'll roll through over the future months. It's for those who are new to CKAN or aren't quite sure what the use case is, it's a mature, extensively adopted technology. It's kind of like the gold standard for open data management systems or platforms. It's come from the heritage of Open Knowledge Foundation, which is a principle-based organization about sharing knowledge. Non-rivalrous information goods such as open data. And it's been picked up from about 2009, there was a big uptake, and it really helps organizations publish and share data. That's really what it does. And then the flip side, it allows people to access that data as well. These days, it's used certainly for government, for open government data programs, and increasingly for enterprise. And I'll talk about why I think that is in a little bit. There's a whole bunch of pretty top-tier organizations using it, not just government agencies, but national jurisdictions, municipalities and cities, non-profit organizations. And less visible in this sort of deck is the actual corporate usage as well. They don't tend to promote their portals. They're more like intranet type data portals. And I think this is the slide that kind of talks about where CKAN's come from and where it's going to, and how those two worlds are sort of coming together. So you think about open access to knowledge, you need a data portal for that, a singular point that people can promote and say, if you would like to find any data in relation to jurisdiction X or government agency Y, go to this portal. We've got everything collated, collected, and available in machine readable formats there. And it's a whole basket of different types of data from different types of public programs or policies, initiatives, and all this kind of stuff. A lot of those portals were developed because of open data decrees, open data first policies implemented, things like that. And what those organizations found is they really need to inventory their data. So CKAN, kind of coming from that perspective, started to be designed to help people as data custodians really inventory their data, catalog their data, use standard metadata schemas or bespoke schemas or modified schemas that fit with their organizational governance practices. And then the third step is kind of like the data lake, where you have lots of data in different organizations coming from, again, different information management systems, And within more in a corporate context, I found that there might be a very mature understanding of data holdings, but a very small subset of organization stakeholders have access to that, certainly expert access or open access to that. And so opening up those data lakes moves you towards the consideration of data catalog, which moves you towards the opportunity to do a data portal. And I think they're the sort of two directions that I think CKAN is maturing within the organization and within the public domain. For those who are a little bit more familiar or a little less around the 101, what is CKAN and what's the sort of main feature set or segmentation? It's a fully described API around traversing the data catalog, all those catalog data sets, the data set resources themselves, which are like tabular data set resources, spatial data set resources, even documents and other types of reports and such can be collected against the data set. There's federation, so having a catalog machine readable means that it's quite easily ingestible by other information management systems and vice versa. You can harvest in and you can syndicate out from CKAN quite easily. It's built with an extensible sort of framework. You can extend it with resource views on tabular resources. You can create your own resource view or spatial resources and other types of resources. And you can extend it other ways as well. You can use it as a data store. The best example is, if you've got a CSV file, comma separated values file, you upload that as a resource against a data set, then that can be ingested into Postgres, and then that table itself can be queried via API. So not only do you have the fully traversable catalog down to the metadata around the data set, down to the metadata around the resource, but then you can go record level in and query the actual table itself, which is a pretty cool thing if you've got lots and lots of data to ingest into a catalog. It is themable, just like any modern web app. You can change the look and feel fairly easily. You can change the user journeys. You can change the integration aesthetically with our other sort of content management applications and such. I've talked a bit about metadata. And again, using sort of a DCAT standard, you can scheme the metadata. There's fairly robust permissioning now all around the API and the user interface, down to fairly granular access to resources and such. So you can do a lot of cool integrations. If you've got single sign-on and you want to authenticate against something like an Active Directory, you can do a fair bit of cool stuff around there. Visualization, I've talked about resource views. So there's a myriad of visualization resource views you can add into CKAN. And again, you can roll your own, build your own. Managing the data via the user interface, but also managing data via API and other scripts. There's libraries of scripts that you can pull down off the off GitHub, find from other organizations where they've published them, and use them within CKAN as well. And lastly, versioning. Just the concept of once you've got a data set, revisions to that data set, the versioning of those revisions around the metadata, as well as the resources themselves and the changes over time. All good stuff with regard to data governance. That's the basics. There's heaps more, and each one of those goes a lot deeper. I promised that I'd talk about conceptual architecture, which is a pretty fluffy thing. I thought I'd do this with a view of kind of like two reference sites. So with the work that we do at Link Digital, we come from like a web development space. So we do data management, web development, and the whole user journey. And so at the top level of that diagram there, you're just seeing the concept of an aesthetic integration for an open data portal. We typically use Drupal at the moment. So for content access, even for login and authentication, we might use Drupal going through an identity access manager or provider. The catalog itself, both the user interface and the API would be CKAN. And something like Geospatial, we can use other open source tools such as TerriaJS for visualizing that. So that would be the public data portal. For an example, I'll show you in a minute. Then beneath the scenes, when you're looking at the full pipeline of data governance practices, you have to recognize that maybe the data access levels need to be robustly checked before anything is published. So things are kind of like in this private zone or intranet zone. Additionally, the harvest sources might be within private networks or internal networks for an organization. So you might have internal manual upload processes or automated upload processes from those other trusted sources. You might want to go through a data enrichment process before you then have your workflow policy and rules tick the box to say, like a customs card when you're entering a country, all of the correct things are being checked off. Now it can go to the public data portal. And similarly, in this sort of architecture, we talk about having something like GeoServer for hosting spatial data sets as well, for machine readable endpoints, that is. Lastly, below that is, wherever you want this sitting, because CKAN is a Python-based web application stack, you can deploy it in any modern cloud. The network storage and compute components associated with that, how you want to roll that will depend on the kind of platform. So if you've got a lot of network or storage costs built in, like petabytes of data, you might find that something like Azure is slightly cheaper than somewhere like AWS. But if it's mostly around the compute, that's going to be the cost burden. You might find that AWS is going to be cheaper. But you can pick and choose where you want to deploy CKAN and how you want to architect it. The example I thought I'd go through is just very quickly, just to show you a little bit how this works together. So this is the Pacific Data Hub. This is basically the Drupal front end. So you can see that Drupal's just got content management widgets. It's got data views to an extent, and this data is all coming out of CKAN datasets. If you go to the actual data catalog, then in the URL path, it's just /data. So it's an aesthetic integration. There are some read access between the different sections of the site, but this is your typical CKAN result set page where you've got your faceted search. You can drill into your results. And in terms of other tools, a cool one is the Pacific map. This is the TerriaJS geospatial viewer. And it's kind of like a different front end on top of CKAN. So if I explore map data, bring up something like the Pacific Data Hub catalog, and this is currently traversing through that API into CKAN, finding what data sets are available of the right data type. You can say, let's say this is all the metadata coming out of CKAN. I can add it to the map. And if it's not too big, it's in Rarotonga, so that's all South Pacific. Let's try and find the ideal zoom. And that's it. That's Rarotonga, which is a cool little island I went to on my honeymoon with my wife. We climbed over one of these mountains here. So that's like just an example of different front ends can sit on top of CKAN, because fundamentally you've got an open API. And so that's very flexible with those sorts of integrations. Going back to the slides, data storage patterns. So this is a really clunky, complex sort of diagram, or if you call it a diagram. But I just wanted to sort of break down how data sets themselves are stored within Postgres, the schema. And then resources also have their own schema. And then files, or locations of these things, can have their own sort of storage pattern. So for some implementations, we would have a URL, not an actual storage location that's managed by CKAN itself. It just allows the end user to drop in a URL and say that's where the file resource is that I'm trying to catalog for this purpose. In other cases, we'll have more advanced functions where we're finding out if they want to upload a zip file, or they have large CSV files. There might be millions of records, and we can determine if they're going to be stored as on AWS bucket, or they might be stored locally on a file storage in Elastic Block Store, EBS volumes, sorry. So all the different storage patterns can be selectively coded into CKAN based on the organizational requirements. It's really cool. And then the catalog itself is, again, it's just a Postgres DB. Tables are all indexed by Solr, and that can be outputted in various formats, which gets you to data access patterns. So the typical sort of data access pattern really is driven through Solr. that every data set is associated with an organization. You can additionally associate with topics or groups, whatever you want to call it. And from that, everything is indexed. So the resources, the metadata for the data sets are all indexed. The metadata for the resources are all indexed. And then depending on how you want to surface that metadata for end users, every result set is typically just a data set list view. And I can probably show you a couple of cool things that we're working on at the moment. It gets down to sort of like demo-ish type stuff. So this is the 3-tier text search approach. This is a dev site for an environmental data portal. So if we just do a general search, this is what we call the first tier search, where it's coming up with relevant searches to the query you just put in. The second tier would be a slightly more advanced search, where you can do things like is water, but maybe is not something else. And then third tier would be for, you know, more advanced. We're going to go down the level of advancement of users, which is when they can actually just put a Solr query directly in. So CKAN is like really handy for that kind of really shaping of the user experience for different types of stakeholders, from the very lowly technical literate to all the way up to data scientists who know the data set that they're looking for quite specifically, or the collection of data sets.
Let's add a comment there, Stephen. Is it okay if I add a comment there just for a moment, which is, I think also what reflecting is, basically as data, like many of the, let's say what you're seeing, whether it's in public data portals which are there or internal, it's this explosion of you know, at the beginning, even in open data portals, it's like, can we get some data out there? You know, that maybe the number of data sets was relatively small. And I think there are two things that Stephen was showing that I think are really relevant. One is that data discovery, like the irony is, it's like the beginning of the people, I mean, many of us now are not young enough or whatever, but the very beginning of the web in the 90s, you didn't need a search engine like Google. You just literally had people who would be like curating links, you know, like, oh, here's, you know, the original Yahoo was just a curated list. And one of the things there that Stephen was showing, I think, of the search is just as the amount of data is growing, it's actually difficult to find the data you want. And that's something that making effort to really find how you can delve into the metadata, whether it's geospatial search, whether it's there different, and just even allowing also different types of more power users versus simple users. So one is just that of like discovery and metadata querying is something. And also what you were illustrating was how flexible, you know, CKAN does allow you to be very flexible. You want to add something, you want to do something custom, you can do that. I think that was a really good point there to emphasize. And the other was data quality. And what you were getting was all the ingestion. I mean, your earlier diagram, just like the other thing now was originally, it was just like, let's get some data, at least in open data portal land. I think really the last 5 years, 6 years, and certainly now it's like data quality. So it's both quality on metadata and quality of discovery and quality on data itself and your ingestion pipeline you were showing earlier, Steve. Anyway, I'll let you go back. I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's kind of bringing context to also why that rich search is so useful.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, this is a good example of some of those things. So this is actually just pulling up a Solr query directly and to find things that have parent-child relationship. So this is an example of just showing some minimal data lineage sort of approach with CKAN. So if I have a look at one of these data sets, the functionality I'm just sort of showing you here is that there's related data sets. So at the moment, this is the block that's telling us this is the one we're on. You are here, and you can go up to the parent, or you can go to two siblings. And if you go to those, so at 2017-18, it will then basically update. So that's where you are now. But as you were just talking about then, yeah, this client in particular, they have all of their internal data governance practices. And once they check through those, they then can issue as one of the final points of that is a data quality statement, which is then attached to the data set as well. And separate to that, they have data governance captured on their internal data catalog as well. So specifically when is this data set reviewed, who's responsible for reviewing it, how often is it reviewed, things like that. And I'm kind of showing these ones because I think some people on the call might be interested in some of those features, the slightly more technical features that aren't necessarily out of the box, at least with this user interface. Last one, at least, I thought I might show is just talk about self-learning search. So we just merged code for, I guess, building into the search engine's relevance score, just as like a solar search engine relevance. When you do a search, it'll query based on the factoring you want against things like the title, the description, particular keywords and such. So if you put in a word like water, it will give you a blended result in terms of the relevance score. And we've just completed testing on a addition to that, which will allow you to build in what people ended up clicking on when they put in a search query term, and we'll build that result back into the actual influence for the ranking. So that's a pretty cool feature that I think we'll have available soonish. It's for Data Western Australia for their open data platform. And I guess the last two slides are just a couple of examples of other work that we've done. So there's the generic CKAN data portal, which is at demo.ckan.org. That's not us, that's just obviously for the community. If you want to just look at how it operates out of the box. South Pacific portal, data portal is the one that I was just showing. Flood data portal, which has quite complex collections of data and access model in terms of stakeholders. Brisbane City Council is more like municipality data, so there's some real-time data coming in from traffic signaling systems. Climate data portal, this is getting down to like bigger collections of data, not lots of heterogeneous collections of data. It's like a fairly big singular globular set of data, and they wanted a really nice access methodology for that. They chose CKAN. Similarly for geoscience data, I guess it's a set for different stakeholders, but they really wanted to fine-tune the access pathways for a variety of users, and they chose CKAN for that requirement. The seed data portal is one I was just showing you. There are some cool features with seed which allows for citizen science as well. So there's a marriage between citizen science. If you're going to create projects, bring volunteers together, and then have them embark on a collection of data, then you can attach that and marry that with the data set itself. And attached to the seed one, we have like a Drupal site, which is all about citizen science. And the last one I just thought I'd mention as well is datasheds.info. For folks on the call that may or may not, this is like dataportals.org, I think it is, Rufus Open Knowledge. There's a bit of a bug, but if you go down to the Explore Now off the About, it will give you a listing, assuming, oh, it's going to render, sorry. Like say, I think Alexa's on the call, there it is. So this is a pretty cool up-to-date listing of data portals that are using CKAN. You can go into pretty much any of these, and all with Ontario, and learn a little bit about the portal. So if you're interested to know, how much data is being added to it generally over time, I think for those who are more technical, you can have a look at the deployment information, see what version it's running, what plugins or extensions it's using, and across the selection of all those catalogs that are indexed, how many of them are actually using that, such as the stats engine or the stats plugin or the image view plugin, for example. And that's it. That's all I prepared for this call. So that might spark some questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
We have some questions in the chat.
I don't think I could answer quickly in terms of linked data style knowledge graphs and ontologies and all that kind of stuff versus what is CKAN as a data cataloging platform. I guess the simple thing is CKAN is about cataloging discrete data sets, whereas a knowledge graph is going to be how do all these data sets semantically relate to each other, and do they have relatable field names and field values all the way down to the nth degree. at that end of the spectrum. So how does it relate? Well, you can export the catalog as an RDF and then ingest that into your knowledge graph if you're doing that sort of approach. That's a good question. So that full search configuration around the 3-tier of search, because CKAN is AGPL licensed, there's an obligation by anyone who's using it to make that code available upon request, or proactively is the better approach. I'd have to check what the release status of that code, whether it's on GitHub or a public repo as yet. But it's in dev. That particular 3-tier thing that I was just demoing is in dev at the moment. So I'm expecting that would be going into production in the next month, probably.
I would just emphasize, maybe Stephen, I say, what I think also Anu wrote back on the chat is that CKAN is quite like, obviously there's still its default faceting and search, which is just there, is there. The main thing might have been, there are several plugins already out there, I know, that do like auto suggestion type stuff, which showed up. Doing the Solar query that's very easy. I don't know whether there's a plugin or that's something that would certainly be able to do quite custom quickly. And then there was the intermediate level like equals and so on. So I think they're different things. But what I emphasize, A, there are plugins that do some of those things. And secondly, that I often emphasize is you might often take an existing plugin and you're going to customize it a little bit. And that's very quick to do in those areas in CKAN. Those are quite well known. You might still want some expert help, but in general, those things can be added. And I think, so there's one, if you wanted all three, that's the kind of thing where there's the extension that would get released. But then also just emphasizing some parts of that, I think like auto suggestion or other aspects are there or would be easy to add, just to mention.
Yeah, and some of these functionalities are actually just built on the core functionalities of CKAN. So it's more like the user interface approach or the user journey approach that's been applied to those core functionalities. Well, that's an interesting question. So I guess it's a database rather than a data set. So I guess CKAN is more about cataloging. You can catalog an endpoint. So you can say this database is a data set and here's all the metadata. Here's a download to it, or here's an access path to it. Typically clients or people that we work with at CKAN will be publishing a data set, not an active database as such. But when we ingest from, well, it depends on what they ask us to ingest from. So that climate data portal is kind of like a complex, hierarchically derived sort of set of data. And the question was, what are the access paths and what are the natural parts of that database that would kind of be packaged out or published out as discrete data segments or data sets? So that's a very awkward way of not answering the question. If that helps.
Just aware of time. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer there is that is a common case, like that there's two ways, just to finish on that point, that you can, if you've got database or other data assets that you want to surface as you can, one answer is very straightforward, to surface as an asset as a data set or something. If you want to have like transparent access, in a theory, that's not also like, you can that. Often what's a little bit complicated is permissioning or things like that. What do you want permissioning in CKAN to control your access to that database, or is that a separate one? I'm aware, I just want to come back to Joanna as our other chair, just on time. Obviously we might not have stuff, so we can use the time, but we've got about 8 minutes in theory officially left on the call. And there've already been a load of great questions. Are there any, and I just want to say, I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Stephen, for stepping in. Just to emphasize, one thing is we're very interested. Please email Joanna. Maybe Joanna can put her email in the chat. But if you would be interested, and we're putting together our kind of schedule of people. So if you might, want to come and give a 5-minute or a 10-minute talk, or or 2 minutes, or 30 minutes, I don't know. But if there's something you want to share on, you might be thinking about now having seen it today, please maybe email Joanna, or you can put it in the Google Doc. But basically, we're kind of curating people who could share on future of these calls. I really wanted to just again thank Stephen for kicking this off in such great style today on that one. And it might be, it might be about one you've implemented. And also, we're also open to talks, generally they're around CKAN or related to C, but they could also be around other technology, or, here's this amazing visualization we built on top of CKAN. So we're open to stuff like that in general. I just want to emphasize. So yeah, just to flag that. If you are interested in sharing on another call, you might want to prep a bit or have some slides. That's what we'd really welcome. That would be fantastic to have stuff from the others like that. And I just want to, I was checking the chat. There's a discussion.
Just to add to that, there is a section suggestions for topics and speakers. It is in the meeting doc. So yeah, feel free to fill your suggestions. And then I will contact everybody, of course. So it's important to put your name there or some contact so I can.
I'm also emphasizing some people might just prefer to be like if you're happy to put it publicly, please do. If you want to email Joanna directly with a suggestion, feel free to do that. If you had a question about whether it's appropriate or something, that's fine. And Joanna, maybe you could just put it in the chat. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. No, I know some people I'm a shy person sometimes. I would, so public document. So just to say, is there anyone, and it may not be the case for today, are there any community announcements or sharing? You can always post it in the chat that people would want to mention. Or as part of this separately is we are interested in suggestions, including very feedback of how we can improve the experience, for CKAN, and maybe in general, other things also, like even feedback on whether this session or things people would like in these community sessions, but also things that we could improve in CKAN. I know, so we're very interested in that. Obviously, and we also want to emphasize, I don't know whether we could briefly, maybe, I don't know whether it's Anna or Adria's here, but we just want to mention, I think someone already posted in the chat about this now, a very active discussions channel. I'll just repost it for kind of technical discussions, really, I guess, there. And I also mentioned that we made quite an effort, the technical team be making quite an effort. There's a bunch of curated tickets. I think currently under the title, the Rockstar ticket. So if you'd like to come along and you want to start contributing to CKAN at a technical level, and you want to so good first issues, basically, I really emphasize maybe again, if someone could put the link in the chat to that, maybe that thread or the board, that would be awesome. But just really want to emphasize, we really welcome contribution and their curated tickets on that. Yeah, if there's anything or any feedback or suggestions people have or things they'd like to share about, that's great. I know there's a large group of us today. So, but yeah, really.
I can add one, actually, I totally forgot about. Sergey in our team recently trained up a whole bunch of people. We started a new team in Vietnam. So we trained up, I think, 3 people at once. So you build a curriculum for that, with the view that we would rerun that program again. And at the moment, we're just kind of interested to find out if there is kind of like a market for that, if there's folks who want, within their organization, within their team, or for personally their own reason, are looking for training in CKAN. It's kind of like the full stack. It's not just how CKAN works. It's like how to really get working with CKAN all the way through to building your first extension, as it were. So feel free to drop a note or shoot me an email if anyone's interested in something like that. We're not literally packaging up right now, but we're interested to find out if it's something people would be after.
That's great, Stephen. I can also drop in a link here at least to some material around that as well, like if you're getting started. But I think that's something I hear regularly, and that's something that we could improve, I know, in having more like material around that for stuff. I'm aware we're coming to the end of the call. No one yet has, so I wanted to say, maybe Joanna, like we're planning, the aim is these monthly, come what may, even, so that's right. We haven't got the exact date yet, but we're planning another one in July. Is that right? On the second or third Wednesday?
Yes. For now, we are planning to be every third Wednesday of the month.
Great. Well, I just want to really thank everyone from Stephen and me, and Joanna and the team. Maybe if people want to put any reactions, I mean, I know it's been a Zoom call sometimes, but if you let us know in the chat, if this has been useful, if you have got any suggestions you haven't got to share, and just really thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I hope it has been useful. And this is the beginning. I know how these start. So having 50 people here, it's amazing. And please let us know if there is something you'd like to share about, or organizations using CKAN in some way or anything like that. We'd love to hear about it. And yeah, just really, really appreciate everyone being here today. And yeah, please, as I said, maybe give a tiny, if you want to say just even thumbs up or a +1 on the channel, whether this was useful to you. And if there's anything you'd like to see for next time, let us know. And otherwise from maybe the last word to Stephen and Joanna, like just to say, yeah, thanks from all of us.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome seeing so many people. And joining the tech team calls over the last 1.5 years, particularly, that you've seen the uptick in how many people are joining those. And for the first webinar call out, this is a pretty amazing response. So thank you to everyone for coming along.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the meetup, and expect emails from me.
Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great morning or evening or afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day.